Okay. And welcome everyone to the Moriah Nightly News on this Friday, May 29th, 2026. This is, of course, take number two. I do not know what is going on. Well, this is the second time in a row that the audio has dropped mid stream. So we'll see what happens here. And it's very difficult to be a producer and a producer, director, and an anchor all at the same time. But we'll go with it. So from the nation to Moriah, here are tonight's top stories. With the war in Iran, as I have been stating for the last 4 weeks, at least on this broadcast, the ceasefire has been ongoing in that situation. The president appeared on Wednesday that he was unfazed by calls that the midterm would influence his decision making, or claims that it would influence his decision making. The basically going against the strategy that he would wait out the Iranians and all of that, saying that he's basically unfazed. And so we will see how that all pans out. And he called on that. This was in the Wall Street Journal, that he called the recent wins in the midterm primaries a precursor to what was to come, as a backdrop to what his GOP counterparts were calling or signaling the alarm on potential downturns at the polls this November. So we will see how that turns out. As the week has unfolded, the framework for a potential deal remains about the same, with the nuclear material being the primary strategic objective for the United States to want to get a hold of that. The president would like to see that in American hands. What I believe is significant for this deal is the expansion of the 2020 Abraham Accords and the stronger diplomatic ties to Israel that will produce for the Arab nations. And I note that, of course, to again buffer the anti Semitism in both the media and the Democratic Party. One thing that has been noted very well is that Iran's economy is getting desperate, with domestic goods like cheese and basically food costs skyrocketing within Iran. And so we will see how that will pan out. And I note that to say, don't be fooled by the establishment, media establishment, telling you that the U.S. is losing the war, as I've noted, using terms like quagmire and things like that to describe a 60-day-old or so conflict, when that's not the case. And they are very much feeling the pinch. And it was noted through a Pakistani official that the economics has been the main battlefield of this war at this point. That is where that stands. The oil, which had been the bottleneck in the beginning, has been somewhat circumvented as U.S. oil companies have shifted and found other ways to supply for the long haul, almost making the Strait of Hormuz irrelevant. One thing that was noted earlier in the week by the Wall Street Journal was that at one point in time in our history, not that long ago, or seemingly not that long ago, was that as recent as the 1930s through the 1950s, it was Texas oil companies that set the global oil price, not the OPEC nations. So maybe we should go back to some similar system like that and let the US set the price rather than OPEC. Seems more sensible and would take pressure off. Now, Israel has been moving to take leaders across the board in Hamas, Hezbollah. They have their own problems with that has produced a challenge, but they are seeking to hold responsible any who were involved in the October 7th attacks there. The humanitarian crisis was noted by the Wall Street Journal as well, and I will let God be the judge and hold them to account. Here on the state level, which was noted by the Press Republican today, because it finally came out that your money, and this is concerning your money, the budget was passed. And I'm on the wrong page. Here we go. And I skipped over some notes there with North Korea, but that is perfectly all right. So anyway, I guess being jumbled up here as a producer has made me a little anxious and on edge. New York State passed a $268.5 billion budget. This was the numbers from the Press Republican. And the language from that article in today's paper said that Hochul had shoehorned policy into financials. This was the language that they used, so it sounded like even they are somewhat skeptical. And basically most of what she wanted for policy got in. And so this is what the policy included. It included changes to state climate law, although the details were not given in the article, and significant for what we're seeing in the region. We'll get to that in a moment. Cutting down on auto insurance fraud or attempts to reduce that, attempts to hold companies accountable with costs and lowering costs for consumers. That was the language given by the Press Republican. New legislation to protect minors with the rise in AI and regulating chatbots, AI chat algorithms for those under the age of 18. So that was significant there, not a bad idea there. But the big piece of item that perhaps would be significant for voters or for New York State residents are rebate checks, which she called power checks. So that is the term from the article. I'm not making that up. These are $100 to $200 checks to help New Yorkers with the rising costs of their electric bills. That exact amount is depending upon whether you file your taxes jointly or as a single person. And so it would vary between $100, $150, or $200 depending upon your taxation status. And if you want my take on that, it's just another ploy to buy votes, much like those rebate checks we got last time around. And I, for one, was not fooled, and I hope you are not either. The Citizens Budget Commission had mixed reviews on the budget, and they are a group out of Albany that attempts to hold our leaders there accountable financially, or basically fiscally responsible and transparent. Their president, their spokesperson, said it was admirable policy goals, but missed the mark on actual finances. And that, of course, is no surprise to anyone, I don't think, because we all know they like to spend more than they take in, as per usual. And again, don't be fooled by Democrats buying votes, especially Kathy Hochul. I did not think could get worse in New York State after Andrew Cuomo, but I was wrong. Very, very wrong. So, with that being said, I will move into the local headlines, which are surprisingly related, but not before highlighting tonight's business in our business spotlight. Tonight's business is the final one on our docket from our pre-vacation launch, which was Eucalyptus Logging and Construction here in Moriah, New York, in business for well over 40 years, starting back in 1987, and has been serving the community with that business for well over 40 years, serving, of course, with firewood, log length firewood, and on the construction side as well, doing all kinds of things there with that. So that is Eucalyptus Logging and Construction on tonight's business spotlight. And he is not on. They are not on Facebook or anything like that, but they have such a strong community presence that and reputation that it's almost not needed at this point. And now I will move into the top story. With all of the things going on with the best storage unit in Ticonderoga, some information came in for a broader state of that affair more regionally. The APA has green-lighted a similar project down in, I think this was Northampton. I can't even read my own writing. Northampton. This is a town. So this is a town near the Great Sacandaga Lake, according to the Press Republican. This was their article. So they have green-lighted that project. And along with green-lighting a best project down there, there's also a proposed best project up in Lion Mountain in the town of Dannemora, just to the north of our primary viewing area here. So all of these things quiet that we are trying to bring attention to and expose and inform you on so that you can make the best decisions possible. There are right now in New York State more than 5,000 existing battery energy storage projects. And you heard that right. That was not 500. That was not 50. That was 5,000. There are 3 zeros behind that 5. And it surprised me a little bit too when I saw that number in New York State. Many of those would be in the downstate region. Downstate to us being outside of the Adirondacks, but still attempting to use up the land that we have available in this region. Remember, if you go out in the western part of the state, there's a lot of farmland out that way as well, with the Amish and things like that out there that are attempting to fight back, as I mentioned on Wednesday. Crown Point here locally has passed a 1-year moratorium on BESS and lithium battery storage units. And they have made clear that they do not want this in our backyard. That is a 6 months longer than the one in Ticonderoga. And The article in the Press Republican did note that Moriah, here in Moriah, and up in Champlain, up by the border, that they are also considering a moratorium as well on these types of projects. And so I would happen to agree that with all of the research that has been done here, that we should certainly push for a moratorium, even a permanent ban on these projects here in Moriah and elsewhere. And this will be very much an uphill battle because the Green New Scam and other pushes on the state level, and that we would not have to be having this conversation at all had these not been pushed through above us, above our heads. But here we are. And I would not underestimate the power of we the people, given what I saw from our Sentinel brothers and sisters in Ticonderoga over the last couple of weeks. And I would urge them to keep fighting as well in that process. On a connected note, I had mentioned in the Moriah Central School budget report the purchase or the attempted purchase of an electric bus before we took our vacation last week. That did not end up, I'm not certain, it might have passed the vote, but that, of course, is suspended now because on the state level, it was superseded by a 5-year extension to the mandate that would push out till 2032 this requirement to have all electric buses for our school districts. And I was not, and this is again, as I am a growing local journalist, I have had to learn and become more aware on the local level of just how pervasive and really invasive, talk about invasive species in the Adirondacks, just how invasive and intrusive and corrupt these agendas are into our freedoms and way of life here. These renewable energy agendas are that this mandate was really enforced by 2027. I did not know it was that soon, but in that I didn't realize that was why Moriah Central was probably pushing these buses that strongly. However, you, the voters, have the ability to say no. Why I urge everybody to get out and vote on these things when they come up on the ballots, as I did before the budget vote. And I ran the piece to indicate the cost of that bus would have been twice, more than double, the amount of a diesel-powered bus. So this is the quote from Dan Steck, and this was from the Press Republican, or the article at least was printed in the Press Republican. I'm not sure if it was their original reporting, but this was what Dan Steck had to say about this issue. I have 48 school districts in my Senate district. In the last 3 years, I have not heard a single school district tell me that they thought the EV mandate was a wise idea or a workable idea, or certainly an affordable idea. And so I would certainly agree with Dan Steck. And whatever your political party is, it should not be a matter of political party. It should be a matter of common sense. Unfortunately, I just happen to think that more of that occurs this day and age on a certain side of the aisle more than another. But again, you are free to disagree with that opinion because it is a free country, as it will always remain, as it should. And so finally tonight, to end on a note far removed from politics and to try and end these broadcasts on a positive, uplifting note. And I see that I am ending a little bit earlier than I would normally end. So many of you know that I had featured a business on here a couple weeks ago called Y&Y Firewood, which was what my uncle had done. But he also has gotten into hop farming in his retirement. And I will embarrass him here. I hope this all works out correctly. There is Uncle Walt feeding his cows today. I lost my. Oh, there we go. Okay, there I am. And that was earlier today. I took that picture. But earlier today, we had calf was born on our property and in our farm here at Eucalyptus Farms. And no, that is not an actual business. That is just our nickname here. And so that was earlier today. And so there you see a nice healthy calf there to end the week with some more positive and uplifting and encouragement that no matter what we're fighting on the political front, it is always good news because we not only is there still freedom here in the United States, but as I have said before, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it, and it will not overcome it, because the gates of hell will never prevail against the Church of Jesus Christ. Now, with that being said, I do want to also mention that I had announced last night the launch of our radio program. That is our banner for the Moriah Radio Network. There you see it there as I had put it up on Facebook last night. And that is our radio wing that is up on, and I had hoped to be live there tonight, but that did not happen in time. That will allow us to expand into wider programming. There you see it again, wider programming like sports, broadcasting, a lot sooner, with the equipment barrier and the production barrier being a lot smaller, a lot less restrictive to be able to conduct those interviews that I had mentioned in passing earlier on in the program. This newscast will, of course, remain our anchor and flagship show, but having that radio stream will help us get more in-depth coverage around the region out to you much quicker. The link is on our Facebook page, and you can find it there for sure. And that will, again, help us reach not only a wider audience, but also help us to get a wider variety of content out to you much faster with a lower cost than it would be to have to invest in video equipment upfront or things like that. So that is all the news that I have, that we would be able to get that going sooner rather than later. So you can find that. The link is on Facebook, and it is working. I did check it, so it should be working. That is our Moriah Radio Network there. And our sponsorship opportunity, if you would like to be featured on our business spotlight segment, is still in full swing as well. All of that is up there, and it is live on our Facebook and on our we are on YouTube as well. And of course, be sure to like, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and you can find us on all of the major podcasting platforms. So that is the Moriah Nightly News for this May 29th, 2026, and for this week. Have a good weekend, and good night.